Hi, everyone. Welcome to my presentation, how Google Fonts created a specimen page for any typeface. My name is Tobias. I lead the design for Google Fonts. I'm very excited to be back today at ATypI. It's my second ATypI after I joined the one in Reykjavik in 2011, over 10 years ago. So I'm very excited to be back and, having the pleasure to present to you today. So we're going to talk about specimen pages and the new specimen pages that we created for Google Fonts a short while ago. So going back a few years, about 100 years, this is the state of the art for specimen pages. This is a sample page for the accidental task released by Berthold and Bauer in 1912. In print back then. There wasn't any internet. It wasn't for a long time. But things has changed since then. This is a more recent example of a specimen page created by Type. They do these amazing mini sites for their typefaces. This one is sort of like writing a typeface through space. Be careful to buckle in to ensure your safety on this flight. I recommend you go to the Grilly website and watch the whole thing. It's great. They do fantastic mini sites. So we've come from like these printed books to something like this. And there's actually, there are a lot of new mini sites out there. There are a lot of great typefaces that are being created. And most of these typefaces are usually promoted by, a mini site, a digital specimen page of some sorts. So back in 2020, we started working with a wonderful, wonderful designer from Wales by the name of Mark Bolton, who started a project for us that started with a curated list of digital specimen. He basically started blogging, whenever a noteworthy specimen page was released, which he all collected on typespecimens.xyz. You can go there; it's still up. The project ran for about a year, and there's sort of like a wealth of wonderful specimen pages to be seen there. But he didn't just, contain the project to curating and blogging about these digital specimen pages. He also did research. So he did some research about like what people thought about digital specimen pages and what they were important for and what they used them for. So he did all these deep interviews with participants in the study, which included type designers, foundry owners, and all kinds of fonts users. So designers, developers, hobbyists, anyone who might use typography, create typography using type. And he did a top task survey to establish what are the top tasks that people are trying to accomplish when interacting with digital specimen pages. Then how did they rank all these tasks against each other? So the insight was that printed type specimen are collectibles, right? Like people love printed type specimen. They're these wonderful, like physical objects. A lot of love goes into them. They're nice to keep around. Digital specimen pages are a little bit more ephemeral. They only live on your computer or in, the ether. But they still are very useful. They're used as evaluation tools and as a source of specification. So the tasks that are connected to them are, generally from those two categories, for evaluation and for specification. So why did we work with Mark on this sort of research, and what was our motivation behind it? So generally our motivation was that, we think a lot about types, so we think a lot about specimen pages, but specifically in 2020, this was the website that we maintained for the Noto project, which, probably almost everyone who's at ATypI might have heard of. Noto is this big typeface project to cover, any living language. And this was the website that we were maintaining back then. It was at google.com/get/noto. There was nothing wrong with this website, but it looked a little dated at the time, and it didn't cater to all the tasks that we had established participants were after. So we took all these insights and created a new specimen page, which I want to sort of break down for you a little bit today. And it wasn't actually just like one page. Like, our specimen page consisted of like several sub pages that are accessible through this page nav. So let's look at the tasks a little bit. Oh, before we do, just a little glimpse at the Figma file that we shared with Mark. Mark shared with us. This is sort of like an under the hood view of like all the different manifestations of the specimen page that we designed out. There were actually, there's also a landing page and content pages. So it was a big undertaking. So the tasks. This is from the evaluation category. Does the fund have the personality I'm after, and does it fit my project? One of the key questions. So the old Noto page didn't really manage to cater to that. There were a few samples of the text, but we certainly felt it didn't go far enough. So we created a new poster module like that, those big samples at the top of the page to give you like an instant glimpse of what is the typeface about. And then further down the page, more text samples, different paragraph text sizes that you could switch to different styles. So you could really browse through and experience the nature of the typeface. How much does it cost is a recurring question that comes up in a task that people are trying to address. For us, the answer is always it's free, or it doesn't require payment. We've always had a link to the license of our font families on our specimen page. However, like, we frequently got emails from users that hadn't noticed that link, asking us, what the license is, if they had to pay something. So with this new layout, we created within this page navigation in the gray bar that you see at the top here, one link that said about and license, which, besides the about information about the font, contain some information about the license and the link to the license text. Does the typeface come in enough weights and styles? Can I test it out? What are the design highlights? These are the questions that we try to address with, the styles waterfall, which we had for a long time. We just gave that some tweaks and, made the size a little bigger. It has a custom sample text field, so you can change the text to inspect whether the text you need it for, looks the way you want it to look, works the way you want it to work. And we introduced the new type tester, which has functionality for the different variable axes that are supported, and lets you try out text in different sizes and different styles next to each other. Can I see all the characters? Like a glyph table is, that's not revolutionary, but we try to make it a little bit more usable. So we have glyph tables supported on the page, and we added a preview for the glyph that you're hovering over to do like some more detailed inspection of the letter shapes. So, but the big question was, what is the language support, especially for Noto? Noto supports more than 1,000 languages and over 150 writing systems, and that's a lot. That's a lot to design for. Like, that's what makes Noto exciting, but to scale a design up to that was daunting at first. And especially the question about the sample text, like which sample text to show for all these languages. And we landed on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the United Nations, which is one of the most important documents of like humankind, but it's also the document that was translated into the most languages of all documents. As of recently, it's been translated into over 530 languages. So in that sense, it was perfect for us. It's like, it's text that we believe in also, and it's freely available. So we worked with Adam Twardock to apply the Human Rights Declaration to all these different languages and make it work as a sample text. So this is just like a snapshot of the different Noto fonts that we have available on Google Fonts. We also added a language toggle, right? Just because you're looking at Arabic, isn't really like the, enough indication which language you want to read your Arabic text in. So we added a language toggle for you to switch between different languages that are supported by, a font family. And we also added a language support table. It's just like, like a plain old table at the bottom of the, it's underneath the glyph table in our case, listing all the languages that are supported so that if you want to support a specific language, you can go in and, look it up. Is it supported by this typeface, by this font family? And we also had to consider that there are typefaces that aren't necessarily language as we usually think of. There, are the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. There are a few other hieroglyphs on the site as well. So we had to come up with samples for those. There are, the Noto sans symbols, the symbol set, and Noto emoji in color and in monochrome. Jennifer Daniel from the Noto emoji team actually created this wonderful preview text of the saxophone playing caterpillar, which is really lovely. So far we had only been thinking about the new specimen page for the Noto fonts, but we have a large catalog of fonts on fonts.google.com that are not Noto, which has for quite a while been using the sample text almost before we knew it, we had left the ground, which is from a old science fiction book that's in the public domain called Trip to Venus. And that's used by over 1,500 font families in our catalog by now. So we switched from almost before we knew we left the ground to the UDHR as we did for the Noto type, for the Noto fonts, away from this beloved Trip to Venus text to the wonderful UDHR. So this is sort of like, the earlier slide was the before shot. This is the after shot. Now we switch to the UDHR, whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and so on. But we also introduced what we call the primary language setting, which lets us define what language and what writing system a font should default to. This is, very nicely demonstrated here by the IBM Plex font families, where before we did this, all of this would have been in English. So, there would have been IBM Plex Sans in English and IBM Plex Sans Korean in English and Japanese in English. It would have just been the same sample text for these different languages, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So, this new setting lets us define Korean for IBM Plex Sans Korean and so on, so that these typefaces are shown in the language that they're supposed to be seen in. So this is how we landed on our new specimen page for Google Fonts. But we went a little fast when rolling this out in some regards. So one of the things that we went a little fast on was, in our eagerness to support and show the diversity of all the languages supported by a typeface, we made it so that the specimen page just showed a smattering of all the languages supported. So if you went to Francis, for example, it might have been that we showed you Polish, for example, or in those paragraphs it could be like 5 different languages from the set of supported languages by Francis. That wasn't really appreciated by our users. Users still expected the default language to be English, or the language that was their own language, which is hard for us to find out. So we went back to showing English as a default for typefaces using the Latin writing system. Another thing that we had to address after we initially rolled out this new layout was that we had push the styles waterfall further down the page to sit underneath the paragraph text. My thinking there was that, you really want to get acquainted with a typeface and experience it and see it before you commit to using it in the API. However, selecting a style from the styles waterfall is still our main use case for the API. If you want to use our API, you have to, in most scenarios, select a style from the styles waterfall. And it being the main call to action beside download, which is at the top of the page, we push that too far down the page behind a long scroll. So people were not happy about that. So what we did was, defaulted back to English for Latin typefaces in that poster module, and we brought the styles waterfall back up to sit above the sample paragraphs, which you can still experience if you have more interest and scroll further down. But the CTA is back further up on the page. Also condensed the layout of that hero section a little bit, so it's comes up as early as possible. So the good news for everyone else who's not, creating specimen pages for the Google Fonts website is that as a byproduct of Mark's work and the research and the design, there's now also an open source specimen builder that you can get on GitHub. It's on type specimens XYZ. It's built on the specimen skeleton. That's also available on GitHub, and that will let you create specimen pages that look like this. It's fairly plain by intent and by design, but it's fairly easy to apply your own style sheet and your own styling. We've actually used the specimen skeleton for our own websites or our own mini sites that we're publishing besides fonts.google.com, like the new Robotoserif mini site. So this is a very useful, very versatile framework. So all of that is available at typespecimens.xyz. And I'm Tobias. I'm available at these URL addresses. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it to Paris. So if you have any questions or want to chat with me, this is where you find me. Thank you so much. Enjoy ATypI.
So we're very lucky to have Tobias on the phone with us. And at this time, questions. Raise your hand, and I'll bring you the mic so you can ask them directly. I know someone has a question. See, he's up here. He's waiting for a question. Yes. Wait.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it's still an ongoing project. Are there further improvements to the system? And then a follow-up on quickly, is it usable for teams to review their font project or their font family project as they work? Can they exchange comments back and forth on it? Or is it only for buyers or people who want to download and use the font?
So thanks for the question. The website is never done. We still keep refining and working on new versions. We're currently working on a bit of a redesign, which you can expect later in the year. So we're constantly making and thinking about improvements. In terms of collaboration, it's not intended as a collaboration tool. This is for users of Google Fonts, whether you want to download or use the API. But for collaboration, I think other tools are probably better suited. This is not the main use case that we're building for.
I personally want to thank you for your presentation. It was very clear. It was very concise, and I learned a lot, honestly. Thank you very much for all the time that you put into putting it together for us. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.